Win big in 2023 with Team Sync from RotoBaller. Import your fantasy teams and sync your leagues. Get customized tools and tailored advice for your specific rosters and scoring settings, including live recommendations from the Live Draft Assistant, Free Agent Finder, and Lineup Optimizer. Sync an unlimited amount of NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL fantasy teams from all of the major fantasy platforms. Get a discount for any premium pass using my promo code Knuckler, K-N-U-C-K-L-E-R, like R-A Dickey. Just visit rotoballer.com/radio and start rotoballing like a boss, and it makes a great gift for the rotoballer in your life. And what's up, everybody? This is Brady Grove bringing you episode 105 of RotoBaller's official MMA podcast. Tap that, and we are looking forward to UFC Vegas 78 this weekend. We're coming off another great fight night, UFC Nashville. Corey Sandhagen had a dominant performance in the main event. You gave me Dustin Jacoby again as an underdog? Not a chance. Great grappling exchanges over the weekend. Dana White's Contender Series is back. This week there's a lot of stuff going on again. So there's the Contender Series that's continuously going on now for a little bit. Bellator 298 on Friday. There is Anthony Joshua now versus Robert Helenius after DeLeon White failed a drug test, apparently. So that's going on this weekend. You can follow me on Twitter at RotoBrady. That's where I make picks for things like PFL, Bellator 1, Rise in Boxing, and more. Follow the podcast, like, and subscribe on Facebook and YouTube at Tap That MMA Podcast. The card kicks off at 4 p.m. this Saturday. That means I will be in the RotoBaller MMA Discord doing the weekly DFS/sports betting Q&A from 2 to 3 p.m. Show up and let's talk. And we got some interlude episodes coming. I have paired with the great University of Eastern Kentucky University. We'll be talking to some student athletes from there pretty soon. But tonight we are making picks for UFC Vegas 78.
Break out the red panties.
We got 13 fights on this card, starting with a flyweight matchup between Juliana Miller and Luana Santos. A men's bantamweight matchup between Jose Johnson and Damon Blackshear. A women's strawweight fight between Montserrat Ruiz and Jacqueline Amorim. Martin Bidet versus Josh Parisian at heavyweight. Francis Marshall at featherweight against Isaac Dulgarian, who is 5-0 as a professional. Lightweight, Terrence McKinney believes stepping in against Mike Breeden at 155 pounds. He was supposed to fight Lando Veneta. Terrence McKinney needs to get right. Marcus McGee at bantamweight, a 71 professional against 9-5 JP Buys out of South Africa. Josh Fremd. Seems like a weird way to say a name. At middleweight against Jamie. How is he still in the UFC? Pick it.
Don't do this. You cannot do this, you know?
Another middleweight matchup between Tafan Nchukwi and AJ Dobson. A women's strawweight matchup between Poliana Viana and Isman Lucindo. A light heavyweight fight. Another guy who needs to get himself right. Khalil Roundtree against one Chris Daukaus. The featherweight co-main event of the evening. Sure to be an interesting fight on the feet between Cub Swanson, the legend, and Hakeem Dawodu. And we have a 170-pound main event. Sure to be a banger. Sure to be a fight of high skill and of high heart. Vicente Luque against RDA Rafael Dos Anjos.
Break out the red panties.
Well, let's get right into it, folks. Juliana Miller. She is the plus 124 underdog, the winner of the Ultimate Fighter last season against Luana Santos, the minus 148 favorite. Let's talk about Luana Santos, 5-1 as a professional, 23 years old. This is going to be her UFC debut. She is 2-1 in LFA as a pro. Her only loss is by split decision as a professional. She's coming off 2 straight wins in LFA against opponents with a combined 7-1 record. Last time out was March of this year. She got a technical win by guillotine choke over Bartira Rodriguez. That was not even for a belt, but she's stepping up real quick. Juliana Miller, on the other hand, looked great when she beat Brogan Walker-Sanchez in the Ultimate Fighter finale by third-round TKO. She absolutely dominated that fight on the ground. Got battered by Veronica Hardy in similar fight, 62-30 on the striking, 4 takedowns to none. En route to a unanimous decision loss March of this year. All right. Luana Santos has won at a high prospect level in the LFA. She's fought winning opponents. I can respect that. And here's the real thing, is that I feel like I would keep getting burned if I go with Juliana Miller here on the idea that she looked good against Brogan Walker. This idea of Brogan Walker being a, somewhat competitive opponent for comparison's sake has burned me in the past. I think Luana Santos is the more talented fighter here, and I think Juliana Miller looked a lot better by comparison on that season of The Ultimate Fighter. Luana wins this fight 60-65 times out of 100. I think that this fight is going to go, kind of maybe in similar fashion to the way Juliana's last fight went. I think minus 148 for Luana Santos is a steal, and I don't know. I would just say, because Juliana can hold her own on the ground, I would say Luana by decision. Plus 175, hit it. Ow! Next up. What is next up? Bantamweight matchup between Damon Blackshear and Jose Johnson. Blackshear, the minus 290 favorite against Jose Johnson, the plus 235 underdog. Let's start off with Jose Johnson, since he seems to be such a heavy dog here. He is 15-7 as a professional. He looks young. He's 28 years old. His face looks younger than that. He's got a 71-inch reach for this weight class. 7 of his professional wins are by knockout. He's coming in on 3 straight wins in Fury FC and the Contender Series. That was his last fight, August of 2022. 2 finishes in that time, a triangle choke, and a first-round knockout over Delaney Perry in Fury FC 57. His only 2 losses since October 2018. Ronnie Lawrence in the Contender Series and Mana Martinez, both fighters of UFC caliber. And that last loss was May of 2021. Now to Damon Blackshear, he has won 1 of his last 3. He won his last fight. That's always the good fight to have won out of 3 if you can manage it. And okay, so the first fight in the UFC was a draw against Yusuf Zalal, a fight that statistically he kind of got pieced up in. I remember that fight, though. I feel like he won maybe did he get a 10-8 round in the third? I that's how I seem to remember it. Lost a unanimous decision March of 2023. He's remained active since his debut fight in August of 2022. That was a loss to Farid Basharat. Last time out, he beat Luan Lacerda by second round knockout. Yeah, here's the thing. There's nothing to show me that Jose Johnson is better than Luan Lacerda. There's nothing to show me that he is not in maybe... What would tell me that he's in that gap between Lacerda, Basharat, and Zalal? I can't base it all off Jose Johnson's only 2 losses in the last, almost 3 years. No, more than 3 years, being to UFC competition. But, he doesn't really have a lot of good wins in that stretch as well, at least over recognizable names. I mean, Jack Cartwright was 10-0 when he beat him in the Contender Series last time out. I can't discount that. So, maybe plus 235 is a little bit much. I think Jose Johnson could win 30 to 35 of these out of 100. I think Damon Blackshear has demonstrated that he's going to be a little bit too much for Jose Johnson. But there's the question mark factor. I think maybe Warren's plus 235. And you know what, Jose Johnson?
One comment, man. One comment.
No, don't be scared, homie. Come on.
Don't be scared, man. Who's to say that you're not in that gap between Luan Lacerda, Farid Basharat, and who's the other one? Yusuf Zalal. Jose Johnson has been fighting fights at a high level. His last win's in the Contender Series. Who knows? But as far as an outcome, I think Damon Blackshear by TKO knockout makes the most sense. Blackshear by knockout plus 800. Oh, Lord, that can't be right. Perhaps it is. By TKO knockout, plus 800. Well, Blackshear by decision also is plus 200. I don't think that's that much more likely. That's it. Anyway, I think plus 800 for TKO knockout, I actually think is the best value. I think that we have not enough of a sample size of Jose Johnson to say that can happen to him. In fact, it's the way he lost his last fight. It's the way that Damon Blackshear won his most recent fight. Maybe the styles don't necessarily match up to make that perfect, but plus 800, come on. Next up, we've got Jacqueline Amorim at women's strawweight against Montserrat Ruiz. Ruiz is the plus 205 underdog. Jacqueline Amorim, the minus 250 favorite. So we're going to have to start with Amorim here because that is even, she's 6-1 as a professional. She is 28 years old with a 67.5-inch reach. So she came in to the UFC undefeated as a professional, had 4 straight wins at the LFA level. Then she takes a unanimous decision loss to Sam Hughes her last time out. And in that fight, she got outstruck 46-12. She did get 2 takedowns to 1, but she lost a unanimous decision that time. Montserrat Ruiz will be at a 6.5-inch reach disadvantage. She was born in February 1993. She has 1 win in the UFC, March of 2021, by unanimous decision over Cheyenne Vlismas. Her 1 loss is to Amanda Lemos, July of 2021. Did she fight anywhere in between there? 30 years old. No, her last fight was a loss to Amanda Lemos. Yeah, I mean, naturally, my problem here is the lack of activity from Ruiz. I think that, and what has Sam Hughes been up to? I mean, she's a 7-5 professional. She's been mostly, now she's on a 3 out of 4 fight winning streak. So I will give her that, and I'll give it to recency. Amorim has been a lot more active. You got to give her credit for that. You got to give credit to the LFA wins. And Ruiz, it's just so hard to tell from how long ago her 2 fights in the UFC were, regardless of the results. So I think Amorim does win this fight about 70 to 75 times out of 100. And I think she does it inside the distance. And that is minus 150. Hit it. Very reasonable, very prudent. Next up, we got a heavyweight clash between Josh Parisian and Martin Bidet. Bidet, the minus 198 favorite, thank God. Josh Parisian, the plus 164 underdog. Parisian.
Don't do this. You cannot do this,
I just on first glance, but let's get into it. Bidet, winner of 4 in a row. A Contender Series first-round knockout over Lorenzo Hood, and then, honestly, 3 decent names in this next stretch. Decision victories over Chris Barnett, Lucas Brzeski, who he beat by split decision, even though he got outlanded 118-66. And then he outstrikes Jake Collier, April of this year, 98-94. Josh Parisian will have a 2-inch reach advantage. Bidet is 2 years younger. Parisian has lost 2 of his last 3. His only win was a second-round knockout over Alan Boudreaux. He got 3 takedowns in that fight round to a second-round knockout. But losses in that stretch to Dante Almeida by third-round knockout and Jamal Pogues by unanimous decision. He outstruck Pogues 37-33, but he got taken down 5 times to 1. Other wins in his UFC career include Chad Johnson, not Ocho Cinco, and Rocky Martinez. He also got beat by Parker Porter and was a high-volume slugfest, especially for the heavyweight division at this tier. Here's the thing. I really have liked Martin Bidet, I think, in every single fight he's been in, maybe outside of the Chris Barnett fight. Bidet is just, he's just, a dude that I think is going to hang around this division. I think could hover around the rankings. I think that this is kind of a fight that it helps to have volume, sure, against Josh Parisian. I will say that. But if you're going to split decision with Rocky Martinez, I have real concern about what a guy like Martin Bidet, who has done this against several tricky opponents at heavyweight. Martin Bidet wins this fight. He could even get outstruck, and I think still steal 2 out of 3 rounds. That's the kind of fighter that he is. But he's also good at slowing the fight down to his pace. He can win a fight against Chris Barnett, outstriking him 56-23. He can land 66 strikes and beat Lucas Bresky. He almost landed 100 against Jake Collier. Martin Bidet is a steal at minus 198, Frank. Put him, string together a parlay with him. I think Martin Bidet wins this fight 75 to 80 times out of 100. Martin Bidet by decision plus 175. Hit it.
Break out the red panties.
That's how much I love that pick. Love Martin Bidet, Josh Parisian, sacrificial lamb on Saturday. Next up, we've got a featherweight matchup between Francis Marshall and Isaac Dulgarian. Francis Marshall, the minus 166 favorite, Dulgarian, the plus 140 underdog. Let's start with Francis Marshall. Winner of 2 of his last 3, but he lost his last time out April of this year by split decision in a fight that saw only 42 strikes landed against William Gomi. He did land 2 takedowns in that fight. But wins over Marcelo Rojo in December of 2022 by second-round knockout, and a win on the Contender Series by unanimous decision, where he landed 110 strikes and got 6 takedowns. Born in 1999, Isaac Dulgarian, born in 1996, he will be making his UFC debut. 5-0 as a professional, 27 years old, ranked as the number 5 professional featherweight coming out of Kansas and Missouri on Tapology. His wins all have come in FAC. Every professional fight that he's won has come out of the FAC. He was their featherweight champion, but his last fight was February of 2022. He has never lost in his MMA career. The problem is, even back to his amateur career, he has won 1 fight out of 9 that did not take place in the FAC. Francis Marshall has been here. He's done that. And Francis Marshall has shown that he can put up volume like he did against Connor Matthews. He was able to put Marcelo Rojo, away. He displayed his power there. He's gotten as many as 6 takedowns in a single fight. And, against William Gomi, his last time out, it was a close decision. Francis Marshall takes this one by decision. I don't know how Dulgarian loses a fight. We haven't seen it happen yet in his whole career. But I think Francis Marshall has done enough to say that he wins 65 to 70 of these fights out of 100. I would go Marshall by decision plus 330 first, and then I would go Marshall by TKO knockout plus 550. Next up, we've got a lightweight matchup between Terrence T-Rex McKinney and Mike Breeden. McKinney, the minus 278 favorite, Breeden, the plus 225 underdog. Terrence McKinney stepping in, he needs a win. And let's start with Mike Breeden, who also needs a win because he's lost 3 in a row. Granted, the last 2, knockout loss to Alexander the Great Hernandez and a unanimous decision loss to Natan Levy. He outstruck Levy 104 to 92, but he got taken down 9 times to 3. Problem, that was back in April of 2022. Terrence McKinney, who will have a 3-inch reach advantage. He is 5 years younger. He has lost 3 of his last 4. There was a time when he had won those 3 of his last 4, from June of 2021 to August of 2022, against Matt Frivola, Faris Zayam, and Eric Gonzalez, with only a loss to Drew Dober by first-round knockout in between. You still look at, his first 3 losses in the UFC were to Sean Woodson by knockout, Drew Dober by knockout, Ismael Bonfim by knockout. He got flying knee knocked out twice, and then a submission loss to Nazim Sadikov early in the second round when only 14 strikes had been landed. He got the 2 takedowns. That was in July of this year, very recent. Yeah, I think, and he has a 100% finish rate in the UFC. Mike Breeden, I think that this is more of an Alexander Hernandez fight for him, unfortunately. Not at the same level. I would favor Alexander Hernandez more than minus 278 against Mike Breeden if we had to do it over. Terrence McKinney, I think, has still proven, even in his losing ways of late, with the competition that he's lost to, I do think he is a step above Mike Breeden, who has been out of the UFC for over a year now. Terrence McKinney wins this fight 70 to 75 times out of 100, maybe even 80. McKinney inside the distance, minus 250. Damn. Well, let's try to narrow it down a little bit more. 2 subs and a knockout. Breeden, I don't know. Let's go. Breeden has proven, at least knockoutable. Let's go McKinney by TKO knockout. That's just plus 140. And if you want McKinney by submission, that's plus 165. McKinney by TKO knockout, plus 140. Hit it. Ow! Next up, we've got a bantamweight matchup between JP Buys and Marcus McGee. JP Buys is the plus 285 underdog. A lot of fights in this odds range. And Marcus McGee is the minus 360 favorite. Let's talk about Marcus McGee first. Me and Marcus McGee, 7-1, 33 years old as a professional. 6 of his 7 professional wins are by knockout. He has 1 win in the UFC in April of this year by second-round rear naked choke over Journey Newson. Came in via the LFA. His only loss is to Rafael do Nascimento in LFA 135 back in July of last year. That's his only professional loss. His only amateur losses were his first 2 fights back in 2012 and 2014. JP Buys, on the other hand, who I always mix up with, it's a dude that looks just like him, who is also, I feel like, on the Contender Series. It'll come to me. It always does. JP Buys, young savage, loser of 4 of his 5 fights at the Contender Series level or in the UFC. Second-round knockout loss to Joby Sanchez. His only win in that stretch was a first-round guillotine over Jacob Silva in November of 2020. My God, that was that long ago already? Then 3 straight losses against Bruno Silva, who knocked him out in the second round. A unanimous decision loss to Montel Jackson, who took him down 4 times, knocked him down 4 times, and JP Buys only landed 3 strikes. Cody Durden then knocked him out in the first round, outstriking him 23-7, June of last year. Yeah, I mean, why would you think that Marcus McGee wouldn't be able to do to him, even though he finished the last fight by submission? I think the real question is, how does Marcus McGee win this fight? I no longer believe in JP Buys at this level. Marcus McGee wins this fight 80 to 85 times out of 100. JP Buys has just looked really not good in those fights that he's lost. And that fight that he won in the Contender Series, that was too long ago. JP Buys.
Don't do this. You cannot do this,
And what did I say? Marcus McGee wins this fight 80 to 85 times out of 100. I'm not touching a straight-up winner here, but McGee by TKO knockout, minus 150. I love it. Hit it. Next up, we have a middleweight matchup between Josh Fremd and Jamie. How is he still in the UFC? Pickett. I might be wrong. That happens all the time where I look at someone's record and I think that someone is doing way worse than they are because of the aura around them. But let's see. We'll dig into it. Josh Fremd is the namesake of episode 105. Fremd or foe, and I apologize if I've already used that as a title. Pickett, the plus 280 underdog. Fremd, the minus 355 favorite. Let's see if that stacks up. Pickett, loser at 3 in a row. In his time in the UFC since July of 2017, this is 3 Contender Series fights, too. It took him 3 tries to get a win on the Contender Series. In all, he is 3-7 in the UFC. He's lost 3 in a row, and, at least he's remained active. I'll give him that. He got subbed by Kyle Dawkins, got knocked out by Dennis Tuilulin, got subbed real early by Bo Nickel at UFC 285. His only 2 wins since that Contender Series victory in August of 2020 were 2 unanimous decision victories against Loriana Staropoli and Joseph Holmes. He landed a combined 97 strikes and got 4 combined takedowns in those fights. Josh Fremd, and by the way, Jamie Pickett does have a reach of 80 inches. He just doesn't seem to ever use it that well. So here's the thing about Fremd, and so I feel like I was kind of wrong about it. I would love to say that Jamie Pickett has a chance here. Fremd, born in 1994, he'll only be at a 4-inch reach disadvantage. Lost his first 2 fights in the UFC, April and October of 2022. Unanimous decision loss to Anthony Hernandez, forgivable. Submission loss to Tresean Gore. That looks bad when Tresean hasn't looked that good since, his time on The Ultimate Fighter. It's his only win. since his time on The Ultimate Fighter. But Fremd does have a victory. His last time out, a round 2 guillotine victory, March of this year against Cedric Dumas. I gotta look at Pickett again, man. I mean, all right, do I think that victories over Laureano Staropoli and Joseph Holmes are more meaningful than Fremd's victory over Cedric Dumas? I do. And even though I stand by it, how is he still in the UFC? Jamie Pickett, when guys like Brad Katona and Tamir Valia find themselves fighting for their UFC futures on this season of The Ultimate Fighter, Pickett has a chance here. I haven't seen it. I think that these odds are more of an overreaction to Pickett, like you just saw with me, reacting to Jamie Pickett without even looking at his opponent and really considering, is this fight that separated? I don't think so. I think Jamie Pickett can win this fight 40, 45, 50 times out of 100. It's only been since January of 2022 that Jamie Pickett has his last win against a guy like Joseph Holmes. He strung together 2 in a row. The opponents that he has faced since then range from solid prospect or re-emerging prospect in Kyle Dawkins, Dennis Chialulin, who has also been losing in the UFC, but he's definitely a tough middle kind of tier guy. And Bo Nickel, who is an absolute killer of a prospect. Jamie Pickett can win this fight. I think he does it by unanimous decision if he does. So, Pickett plus 280? I can't believe it, but hit it. Ow! And Pickett by decision just to sweeten the pot, plus 550. And I think that if Fremd gets the win here, I would go Fremd by submission. That's plus 240. Next up, that was a fun one to talk about. Roller coaster of emotions. Another middleweight fight, AJ Dobson versus Tafon Nchukwi. Tafon, the minus 142 favorite. I love Tafon. AJ Dobson, the plus 120 underdog. Let's talk about AJ Dobson first. He has one win in the Contender Series by first-round rear naked choke in September of 2021 against Hashim Arkaga. 2 straight losses, February of 2022 and October of 2022, by unanimous decision. He landed a combined 110 strikes in those 2 fights, with 3 takedowns. The problem? His opponents, Jacob Malkoun and Armin Petrosian, granted 2 solid opponents, they landed a combined 198 strikes with 6 takedowns, and all 6 came from Jacob Malkoun. Tafon Nchukwi will have a 1-inch reach advantage, and he is actually 2 years younger than AJ Dobson. He's lost 2 in a row, but he is 3-3 in the UFC. He started off with a second-round knockout victory over Alan Matavo in the Contender Series September of 2020. Then he landed 120 strikes, pacing up Jamie Pickett December of 2020. Then the losing ways started. Majority decision loss to Jung Park, who outstruck him 71-58, 2 takedowns to 1. He has a win against Mike Rodriguez as recent as September of 2021 by unanimous decision. He landed 116 strikes and got 3 takedowns. Mike Rodriguez only landed 49. 2 straight losses to 2 really decent opponents then, who knocked him out March of 2022 and June of 2022 against Azamat Murzakanov and Carlos Ulberg. I think that these odds are perfect. But I don't know if there's any odds you can give me AJ. I think this is a bad matchup. And I think this is a matchup made for, once again, Tafon Nchukwi maybe to land in the range of 80 to 115 strikes against AJ Dobson, while AJ Dobson will struggle, to get off that volume, at least, in meaningful strikes, no more than 50 to 60, I would say. That's at least how it's gone for Tafon's competitors. I don't think AJ Dobson is of the quality of Carlos Ulberg, Azamat Murzakanov, and Jung Park. I think AJ Dobson is a tough fight for a lot of guys on any given night, but he's just not complete enough and doesn't have enough volume on the feet that he's going to be able to throw it to Tafon. The question is, how does Tafon do it? Well, his last 2 wins in the UFC have been by unanimous decision. Dobson's 2 losses in a row have been by unanimous decision. I'm going to say Tafon Nchukwi wins this fight 65 to 70 times out of 100. Hammer minus 142. Ow! And go Tafon by decision. That's plus 215.
Break out the red panties.
That's how I feel about that pick. Next up, we're out of the middleweight contest. We are to a women's strawweight matchup between Polyana Viana and Yasmin Lucendo. Lucendo, the minus 185 favorite. Polyana Viana, the plus 154 underdog. Let's start with Polyana Viana. She's the winner of 3 of her last 4, and she was on a 3-fight losing streak there from August of 2018 to August of 2019. Losses to J.J. Aldrich, Hannah Cyphers, and Veronica Hardy. But 3 out of her last 4 of those victories coming against Emily Whitmire by first-round armbar. Mallory Martin by first-round armbar, February 2021. Her last win was first-round knockout over Jen Frey, November of last year at UFC Fight Night, Rodriguez versus Lemos. Her only loss in that stretch is a unanimous decision against Tabitha Ritchie. She outstruck her 36-33, but she got taken down 5 times. Yasmin Lucendo was born in 2002. I didn't think you were allowed to fight in the UFC if you were born in the 2000s. Just kidding. Take a look at Chase Hooper. But she will have a one-inch reach disadvantage against Polyana Dama de Ferro Viana. Lucendo lost her first fight in the UFC, August of 2022. She's had a little bit more activity, at least, over the last year, or just more recency. Both went to the judges' scorecards. It was a loss to Yasmin Jaragui. She got outstruck 86-66, and Jaragui, was on a 2-fight winning streak before she ran into Denise Gomez just in July of this year. Then she dominated Brogan Walker Sanchez April of 2023 by unanimous decision. Here's the problem. She landed 4 takedowns and outstruck her 53-29. Here's the thing. I don't know how much it means that you got those 4 takedowns against Brogan Walker. Again, I'm questioning everything I ever thought about her leading up to the Ultimate Fighter finale. But Viana, it wasn't necessarily like historically Viana loses to people who were able to take her down. If anything, her problem is that her strikes aren't as effective and she just loses the round-by-round scoring. That's what happened against J.J. Aldrich and Hannah Cyphers. But, she is dangerous as far as submissions go. Uruguay, I think Lucendo is, a prospect and on the rise. Viana is just, won 3 of her last 4. It's been, over a longer time period. That's hard. Viana, born in 1992, that's not, old by any means for the UFC, but she is a decade older than her opponent here. I think you got to count on her being on the way up. I think that there is a ceiling for Viana in the kind of opponent that she can beat. The question is, has Lucendo ascended past that line of which Polyana Viana I just don't think is capable of getting past? I would say, oh, God, I think maybe this does go like the Brogan Walker fight, but just maybe to a lesser extent. I think this could be a closer fight than that because Polyana, keeps those things close. And she's had close decisions in the past. I think that this will be a closer decision. But I think Lucendo is the more likely. I think that Viana is the more likely of the two to win the fight inside the distance. Viana inside the distance, plus 250. I don't hate that at all. Lucendo by decision, I think it'd be my top pick for the fight. That is plus 110. I think this is probably like a 60-40 fight. So maybe Viana is a good value at plus 154, but I think you want to go with the props on this one. But this is an interesting fight. Again, I think that by far the most likely outcome of the fight is Lucendo by decision, and the odds makers have reflected that. Next up, we have 3 fights remaining. We are on to a light heavyweight matchup between Khalil Roundtree Jr. and Chris Daukaus. Daukaus, the plus 150 underdog. Roundtree, the minus 180 favorite. Let's start with the man that badly needs a win, Chris Daukaus. Chris Daukaus.
Nick, one comment, man. One comment.
Oh, don't be scared, homie.
Don't be scared, homie. Chris Daukaus, you started off your time in the UFC from August of 2020 to September of 2021 with 4 knockouts, 3 in the first round against guys like Parker Porter, Rodrigo Nascimento, Alexei Oleinik, and Shamil Abdurakhimov. It's been a rough stretch. Sure, 3 losses in a row since December of 2021, all knockout losses. But that came to the likes of Derek Lewis, Curtis Blades, and Jairzinho Rozenstruik. That's the problem, I am not, inspired by Chris Daukaus, who was born in 1989. He's no spring chicken. I'm not inspired by him at light heavyweight because part of the value of being a prospect at heavyweight is that there's only a handful at a time. And there was a time even when he had won those 4 in a row that you heard me on this show saying that I was certain Chris Daukaus and Tom Aspinall were on a collision course. And fast forward 2 years, that is the furthest thing from the truth. I'm just not as inspired by Chris Daukaus at light heavyweight. I like when guys are heavyweight prospects, but at a certain, he just showed that he was not past the gatekeeper level in the 3 opportunities that he had. Granted, against guys that have occupied the UFC top 10 for years and years. Khalil Roundtree is actually the younger of the two. They both have a 76-inch reach, and look at Khalil. He's won 3 in a row. He's been in the UFC, since July of 2016. He's fought the likes of Tyson Pedro, Andrew Sanchez, Paul Craig, who he beat, Gokhan Saki, Johnny Walker, Eric Anders, who he beat, Ian Kudalaba, Marcin Prachnio, and then he's won 3 in a row, 2 second-round knockouts, and a split decision in that order against Modestas Bukauskas, September 2021, Carl Roberson, March of 2022, and as you know, I don't think he won this fight, but it was a close fight, a split decision victory over Dustin Jacoby, October 2022. My God, that was already, that seems like that was yesterday. Jacoby outstruck him 120-85 in that fight. You see just what happens when you sleep on Dustin Jacoby this past weekend. Oh, Chris Daukaus. Is he Marcin Prachnio? Is he Ian Kudalaba? He's not Johnny Walker at 205 pounds. I think that Khalil Roundtree has looked really good over these last 3 fights. It's been over a solid stretch of opponents. Something's clicked for him since September of 2021. Now, Daukaus is plus 150. In his first fight at light heavyweight, I can't do it. I will have to see a victory against Khalil Roundtree, and that'll be super encouraging for him. If Chris Daukaus is able to beat Khalil Roundtree, that means he could have a future at light heavyweight, at least to make some noise, move up the rankings. I can't take him in this fight, though. I think that Khalil Roundtree, if Chris Daukaus struggles with cutting weight at all, and I don't think he will, but if this, changing of weight classes, if he is slow to adjust to the greater speed, the greater volume, then it's going to be both a long and short night for Chris Daukaus. So, I think Roundtree wins this fight right now. I have to say 65 to 70 times out of 100. So, Roundtree minus 180, I don't know, string something together with that. It's a safety net. I just can't take Chris Daukaus at plus 150. Roundtree by TKO knockout, that's minus 135. I do think that is the best prop of the fight, but Roundtree by decision, that's plus 900. That's not horrific. I don't see why it's plus 900. I guess because Khalil Roundtree's been doing a lot of winning by knockout. And Dustin Jacoby, granted, a really hard guy to knock out. Now, I do think you go Roundtree by knockout, minus 135. But then you also go Daukaus by TKO knockout if you're taking him, and that's plus 240. I don't hate that either. That's a very interesting fight. I'm rooting for Chris Daukaus. I'm kind of rooting for Khalil Roundtree. I'm not going to hold it against him that he beat Dustin Jacoby, who I love. But I just can't take Chris Daukaus in this first fight. We got to see. And I'm hoping it for him, but I really wish just things would have worked out for him at heavyweight. Light heavyweight, every fight, it's not going to, you're not going to be the faster, more athletic probably of this group. That was maybe an advantage he would have had in a lot of heavyweight fights on your way up the rankings. And now, not the case. Now we are on to the co-main event of the evening. And it's a fight between a dog, and he is the underdog in this one, Cub Swanson, plus 190. Hakeem Dawodu is the minus 230 favorite. Let's start with Dawodu. He has less of a story to tell. Loser of 2 of his last 3. His last 5 fights have all gone to the judges' scorecards. There were 2 split decisions in that stretch. There was a split decision before that against Kyle Bojniak that he won. He is good at getting close wins on the judges' scorecards. Only 2 of his fights in the UFC out of 9 have all gone to the judges' scorecards. The 2 of the last 3 losses came to Movsar Evloev, who took him down 9 times, and Julian Arosa, who beat him by unanimous decision, outstriking him 92-74 and got 2 takedowns. He did beat Michael Trezano in between then, February of 2022. He hasn't fought since September of 2022. But against Trezano, he outstruck him 141-70. Trezano still was able to get a takedown, though. Wins 2 over Julio Arce, Zubair Tukhugov, Kyle Bochniak, as I said earlier, and Austin Arnett are the most notable names, and that makes up the majority of his victories. Cub Swanson. Born in 1983, he is 8 years older than Hakeem Dawodu. He will be at a 3-inch disadvantage. Oh, who has this guy fought? Well, he's been in the UFC, or in the WEC, dating back to March of 2007. He fought guys like Jens Pulver, Hiroyuki Takaya, Jose Aldo, John Franchi, Chad Mendez, Ricardo Lamas, George Roop, Ross Pearson. A win over Charles Oliveira back in 2012. A win over Dustin Poirier. A win over Dennis Seaver and Jeremy Stevens. Losses to Frankie Edgar, Max Holloway. He has more wins against Dude Choi in what was an awesome fight, UFC 206. Win over Conor McGregor's boy Artem Lobov.
Break out the red panties.
My God, then he went on to fight again. Brian Ortega, Frankie Edgar, Renato Moicano, Shane Burgos. Now he has won 3 of his last 5, dating back to October of 2019. His last fight, though, was October of 2022. His last win was December of 2021. Those victories came against Kron Gracie by unanimous decision, Daniel Pineda by second-round knockout, and Darren Elkins by first-round knockout. Losses in that stretch by first-round knockout to Giga Chikadze, and a second-round knockout loss to Jonathan Martinez. I mean, it's like... This is the wild part. Cub is going to bring the volume. He's older. His activity is certainly slowed down. It's not like Dawodu has been that much more active over the last few years, at least. Swanson, I mean, it's not that long ago. And he's still won 3 of his last 5. The 2 wins, the 2 losses to Giga and Martinez, guys on the rise, on a fast rise. Cub is going to bring volume. He's going to make it tough. And if Dawodu cannot get a knockout, which he has not done since he fought Yoshinori Horie back in July of 2019, then this is going to be a firefight. And if it's going to be a firefight, I think Cub Swanson can win this fight 40 times. Maybe. Here's the problem. If it goes to decision, I think you got to favor Hakeem Dawodu. And so, I think that you got to favor Dawodu. But minus 230 for the kind of fight that this is going to be is crazy. Cub Swanson is going to make him sweat at some points. And Dawodu has never shown me that he is above and beyond this. You know, Cub Swanson's not going to be going for takedowns. He's not going to beat him like Movsar did. But he's not going to outstrike Cub 141-70 like he did against Michael Trezano. So, Cub has a chance. 35, 40 times out of 100. So, for plus 190, I don't hate it at all. Now, best prop of the fight is Dawodu by decision, plus 200. Cub has only gotten knocked out. I don't know. Dawodu plus 200 by decision, that seems like a crazy good value. Dawodu plus TKO knockout plus 165, Dawodu is just, he's not Martinez or Giga Chikadze. If he does get knocked out by Hakeem Dawodu, it means that that really is time to hang it up. Swanson by decision plus 350, Swanson by TKO knockout plus 650. Yeah, I think you got to go decision plus 350. I don't think he's putting Dawodu away either. Dawodu by decision plus 200. Hit it. Ow! And last but not least, we are on to the welterweight main event, very closely handicapped. It's almost pick'em. This is the main event of UFC Vegas 78. It is Rafael dos Anjos against Vicente Luque. And RDA is the minus 115 favorite. Vicente Luque, the minus 105 underdog. Let's start with Vicente Luque. He was on top of the world from May of 2020 to August of 2021. He had 4 straight wins, including 2 straight Darce choke victories to close out the winning streak. That came against Nico Price, Randy Brown, Tyron Woodley, and Michael Chiesa. Then he ran into, so Belal Muhammad was on his way up. He rode 5 takedowns and decent striking volume, not getting outstruck by too much by Luque. 2 unanimous decision loss against Belal Muhammad, April of 2022. Then, kind of caught us by surprise, but this is what Jeff Neal can do to you, especially when he's a mild underdog on any given night. He outstruck Luque back in August of 2022, 121-97. Got 2 knockdowns, put the fight away in the 3rd. So that's what happened against Jeff Neal. Luque has been in the UFC since July 2015. He's had good volume in there. He has a win over Belal Muhammad. 2 wins over Nico Price in a short span of time. Jalen Turner, Brian Barberena, Mike Perry. And the Chiesa and Woodley wins, it really felt like Luque, it felt like, a top tier was his to lose, a top tier placement. And, he came up short in 2 really important fights, and now, he's back to a fight like this. Against Rafael Dos Anjos, who has now won 3 of his last 4 fights dating back to November of 2022. So let's go back. Let's take it back to June of 2018. He lost 4 of 5 in that stretch to Colby Covington, Kamaru Usman, Leon Edwards, and Michael Chiesa. Hard to blame him there. A win over Kevin Lee in the meantime by 4th round arm triangle, May of 2019. I don't have to run through all the many, many wins that Rafael Dos Anjos has in the UFC. Let's just pick some of the bigger names. Soteropoulos, Guida, Evan Dunham, Cowboy Cerrone. He fought Khabib, Ben Henderson, Nate Diaz, Showtime Pettis, Cowboy again, Eddie Alvarez, Tony Ferguson. Never mind, I'm going through these. This is fun. 2 losses to Colby Covington and Kamaru Usman, fighting the 2 best guys in 170 pounds for many, many years in a row. And then who's after the Kevin Lee win? A dude named Leon Edwards, who got that belt from Kamaru Usman. Now he's won 3 of his last 4 since November of 2020, as I said. And that spans to December of 2022. Those wins came against Paul Felder by split decision. He took him down 6 times in a close and exciting fight. Renato Moicano, unanimous decision victory, outstruck him 149-88, got 5 takedowns. Against Rafael Fiziev, he got finished in the 5th round, July of last year. That was already July of last year. Got outstruck 64-54. He did get 2 takedowns, got knocked out, got knocked down, and then got knocked out in the 5th round. Brian Barberena was his last fight, and it was a 2nd round rear naked choke victory at UFC Fight Night. Thompson versus Holland. Outstruck him 20-14 with 4 takedowns in that stretch. I have to say that this is on RDA's side, and I think Pick'em is a great value to be able to get RDA at. Even I'm seeing him at -125. If anybody is the actual favorite among any of the books, it's RDA. I'm seeing him as a -125, -115 favorite, and Vicente Luque at as a +105 underdog. In certain spots. Oh, and that's the problem. Luque against Belal Muhammad for this fight.
But I'm not impressed by your performance, and I look forward to...
This could be a big win for both of these guys, but this is one that Rafael Dos Anjos is going to get. They both kind of have, similar streaks where, RDA's faced better opponents, and they both have looked good until they fight someone who's just a little bit beyond that. But I think RDA's level has always been higher. And I don't think you can necessarily compare guys that these guys have beaten and lost to. I think that this fight is going to go a lot like the Belal Muhammad fight did for Vicente Luque, except that RDA is going to be able to land more strikes than Muhammad did. Maybe he gets a couple fewer takedowns, but I think that this could be like, 89-85 on the striking in favor of Luque, with RDA getting 2 to 4 takedowns. RDA is going to win this by unanimous decision. So, and I think he wins this fight 60 times out of 100, -115 or 60-65. So anywhere up to -125, -140, even if you see that. I love RDA. Hit it. Ow! And you go RDA by decision, and that is at +215. Hit it again. And RDA from that press conference.
Break out the red panties.
I think that, this is a fight designed for this kind of outcome. I think that this is a really tough matchup for Vicente Luque. Now, if he gets the victory, I think this goes to 5 rounds. I think that Vicente Luque hits him with heavy hands. And I think that he's able to, exploit the fact that RDA has a lot more mileage on him and damage. I think that you could definitely say that. And puts him away in the 5th. Like Rafael Fiziev did, not in, maybe near as impressive fashion for future projection purposes. But I think if one of these two guys gets a victory by a finish in this fight, I think maybe it's Vicente Luque. Luque inside the distance, plus 165. Luque by TKO knockout, plus 250. I don't hate either of those. But ultimately, I am riding with RDA in the main event. And folks, that is UFC Vegas 78. And this has been episode 105 of RotoBallers official MMA podcast. Tap that. You can follow me on Twitter at RotoBrady. There's Bellator 298 this weekend. There's big boxing matches. PFL's in season. The Contender Series is going on. That's where I make picks for all that stuff and stuff like Ryzen, LFA, Cage Warriors, Cage Fury, and more. Follow the podcast, subscribe on Spotify, leave favorable reviews. It's a Tap That MMA podcast, Facebook, YouTube, Spotify. Go to all of them. We appreciate it. There is no sound drop for that. I'll clap. And again, folks, I will be in the RotoBaller MMA Discord from 2 to 3 p.m. on Saturday doing their weekly DFS/sports betting Q&A. Show up. Let's talk about these fights. We got a lot of interlude episodes coming, as always. Ones in the past, lots of fun. They're not time-sensitive. Go check them out. What else is happening this week? College football is just right around the corner. But until then, it's baseball and it's combat sports squaring off. There's a lot of big freak show boxing matches and big events. UFC 292 next week, Saturday, August 19th. Folks, thanks for listening. Have yourselves a great week and enjoy these fights. Peace.